The sound is on now. Hello, fun folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. Tonight I am not playing, I'm playing with questions again. And my guest this evening in Romania and this morning somewhere on the other part of the world. My, as I was said, I have invited a designer, the designer of a um, long list of hits, of board game hits, games which got a spot in a lot of players' collections. A designer which came to my knowledge around 2015, 2016, when his I think it's his second game, which is Riders of the North Sea, came to life, and I think he's the first Kiwi I am talking to. So welcome, Mr. Shem Phillips.
Thank you. Always happy to be a first. So hopefully it's not a bad experience for Kiwis.
None whatsoever experience with Kiwis. I hope you're feeling fine. I hope you are feeling fine here on our in my virtual gaming room, in my on my virtual gaming chairs, virtual chairs.
Yeah,
Um, how is New Zealand in this time of the year?
that's good. Yeah, it's we're going into our summer now, so it's getting a bit hot, a bit windy at the moment, but looking forward to Christmas in 4 days. Yeah.
I see, I see. I hope you're feeling okay. I hope you're feeling relaxed. As always, I start by telling you that this interview has two parts. The first part is a bit more about you, about your life, and the path of becoming who you are today, the person and the designer which you are today, the professional which you are today. And at the end, there is a small questionnaire which gets everybody surprised a bit, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to like it.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I think you Kiwis have something there because sorry for that. When I think of New Zealand, I think of there is a big name in Sir Edmund Hillary,
Yep.
and I also in I think also in rugby you are a pretty big nation,
Yep.
if I'm wrong, and also lately you have I don't know if you have heard of John Danaher. Do you know who he is?
Not sure. No.
He's a big name in jiu-jitsu,
Hi.
a martial art. He's one of the best coaches. He's considered one of the best coaches in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Uh,
Yeah.
so from that small part of the world, well, there is something there. Um, so let's start with you, and we start with my first question, which is, where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in a little town called Paraparaumu in Kapiti Coast in New Zealand, which is about 10 minutes drive from where I am right now. Um, I moved around the country a little bit as a kid. Lived in a place called Ormondville, which is very close to a town called Dannyburg, which is a Viking kind of settlement, which is very, on point. Um, but now I live in Waikanae, which is a smaller town just north of Paraparaumu. We're about an hour's drive north of the capital, Wellington. So it's kind of a coastal village, very nice area. Used to be like, or Waikanae used to be called the place where old people go to retire, but now it's a bit more of a sort of family town. So yeah, real nice place. Cafes, that kind of stuff. Pretty cool.
I see. Um, I almost forgot about. I'm a film director. This is my, and I almost forgot about Sir Peter Jackson.
Yeah, that's usually one that people think of straight away. Yeah.
Yeah. How is your life growing in a small town in New Zealand?
Yeah, it's good. So my dad was a teacher and then became a teaching principal. So most of my like childhood was walking to school with my dad and my brother, kind of close to school there. We played rugby growing up, tennis and all sorts of stuff. Um, my mum was a kindergarten teacher for a long time. Um, Both my mum, my brother are very into their artwork, into their sculpting and painting and all sorts. So kind of grew up around a very kind of creative environment, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, both my parents can play a little bit of music, but not a lot. So it's all this kind of creativity. My mum's like a very good sewer, doing dressmaking and stuff as well. Um, that was kind of yeah, kind of where I grew up, and um, I could never really draw to save my own life. I think I failed. I failed at high school. I failed the main certificate for artwork, so that's why I have talented brother to lean on for some of our games, and Mikhailo for the for all the Vikings and stuff as well. Uh,
Um,
yeah.
what were your interests when you were a child?
Ah, wow. We liked sort of making up our own superheroes. That's one thing we did a lot. I couldn't draw them, but I'd try and draw my own superheroes. My brother was really into his comic books and stuff. Um, so we'd make up our own kind of characters and stuff a lot, make our own worlds, I guess, which we still kind of do now with board games. But yeah, I liked playing rugby a lot when I was little, even though I wasn't very good at it. Liked playing Lego a lot, especially the medieval kind of stuff and the Robin Hood and the pirates. Uh, yeah, we did lots of sort of puzzle, like jigsaw puzzles, card games, and board games growing up as well. Just the classic kind of stuff. Yeah.
Did um, did you uh, did you play out? You say you played some sports. You were interested in playing as a child. Um,
Yeah.
did you play board games with?
We had the kind of the classic games that, like Cluedo and Monopoly, Scrabble, um, other ones like that. We had one called Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs, which was I thought was cool because you actually had like little minis in a way of dinosaurs you can move around. But we played lots of card games, so rummy style games. We had a mahjong set for a while, but we didn't know about sort of hobby games as such or role playing games or anything like that. It was just kind of the mass market stuff that you can get on any shelf. But we like to play a lot. Yeah, so I think it's where my kind of love for board games came from. Was I just enjoyed playing them as a kid. Um, I think my favorite probably would have been Cluedo. I think because it has that extra little level of sort of game in the game, I guess, where it's like deduction and figuring things out, which I enjoyed as a kid. Yeah.
Um, you are a child of the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had you had you well you had your interests in games. Probably at some point you met video games. You videos game video games came your way, and you started probably heavy into video games as every child of the 90s did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
wrong about that?
Yeah. I think my first game was Star Wars. What was it called? I've slipped my mind now. One of the old Jedi Knight games, I think it was called Dark Forces. That was my first computer game. Got into Tomb Raider as well when that first came out. And then lots of Age of Empires. It's like the big game I loved a lot growing up. So, which obviously is where a lot of my kind of love for these medieval civilizations comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Um, what were your interests in school, and what did you study later in high school, and maybe where did you go to, in university?
so my top subjects were like mathematics and physics through school. I loved like geometry and stuff as well. Anything kind of math based. I was terrible at like the writing and stuff. Not terrible, but creative writing at least. And then until I got older, then I realized I actually quite enjoy this kind of stuff. But I enjoyed most of school until the very end, and I was kind of done with it. But I was terrible at the art and that kind of stuff. Didn't even study music or anything at school. Discovered that kind of stuff after school. Um, but top of my class in math for most of my life. Um, and then I went on to study computer support for a little bit for a year and a half. Got my diploma in computer support, walked into a shop to apply for a job, and the guy asked me, "So why do you want to work with computers?" I just kind of looked at him and thought, "I don't really want to work with computers." So I never actually got a job in that field. Ended up getting a few random jobs here and there before landing on making board games.
So, and when did you discover modern board games?
So it was after I actually tried making my own first game. Um,
Oh,
I was like in my early 20s. I think I was probably about 21, 22. I wanted to make a game because I liked playing games and I'd sort of started getting back into it a bit more. Um, Started working on a game. I think I either had released it or I was about to release it. And then a friend of mine showed me Catan. I rushed out and bought Carcassonne and Family Business just because they were like looked similar. And then that same friend invited me along to a convention in Wellington with just a couple hundred people, and we started playing like Le Havre and all these other kind of games of the time. Um, so I was kind of I liked making games. I wanted to make games before I even knew about hobby games at all. So I kind of went through this few years of kind of learning, trying to make games while still learning what makes a good game and what I like in board games. So I did about 5 or 6 years of just kind of experimenting and making games, but not really knowing what I was doing, really. Just having fun with it as a hobby. Yeah.
I see. And how um, did you talked about discovering around what year did you discover modern board gaming?
Wow. I think it would have been, oh gosh, around about 2008 or
2008.
2009.
I see.
Yeah.
So, what kind of games did you enjoy playing?
I played a lot of Citadels when I first got there. We would play like on a Sunday afternoon, just play like 4 or 5 games of it back to back with like the max player count. Um, we played a lot of Catan early on. Um, my wife and I would play like would come back from work and then either play 2 games of Ticket to Ride Europe or 2 games of Carcassonne on the floor back to back as well. So lots of those kind of like those great gateway games is what I loved playing at first. I still actually enjoy those kind of games a lot now as well. Um, but yeah, those ones, some of the bigger games that kind of hooked me in were like Le Havre, where I was like, well, these games are a lot more complex than
Complex, yeah.
I'm used to. Yeah, yeah. Which is, I guess, what started to sort of scratch the itch a bit for me of like, oh, more in depth, more thinking, and more like brain burning, which I enjoy. Yeah.
Um, yeah. What kind of a player are you now? You're a more of a social player, more of a towards the let's say heavier spectrum.
I like any game that can just make my wheels spin a bit in my head, really. I don't mind interaction, but I also don't need interaction necessarily to make the game enjoyable. Um, so I'm more in the camp of like I want a puzzle to solve and I want it to look great on the table. Those are kind of the main things that I enjoy. I don't need lots of plastic and lots of toys, and I don't need like tons of interaction with other players. Um, so as far as like the weight of games, I really don't mind. I think my kind of favorite place is that real brain burning puzzle. But I wouldn't want to do that 24 hours a day. So I quite enjoy lighter abstract and puzzly kind of games as well. So anything that's just like gets the wheel spinning though. Like I was playing yesterday, I was playing Turing Machine and Fantastic Factories, which are lighter games, but they were still fun. They were enjoyable because I had to like start thinking and processing and working things out. So that's what I enjoy about games, really.
I see. Um, So you you started to talk a bit about that. How did you? Why did you want to make games? How did you come to that conclusion? I would like to make my own games.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of the result of me being a creative person, really. Um, because I play music. I always enjoyed listening to music growing up. And once I could start playing, I was like, oh, why shouldn't I start making my own music? It just kind of seems like the natural thing to do. If you like doing something, try and do it yourself, make your own version of it. So for board games, it was similar. I'd started playing some of my old classic games again. My wife and I have been playing Scrabble quite a bit, and even before that as well. And then I think that just got me thinking, oh, maybe I should make my own game, something that I want to enjoy, I want to do. So that's really it. It was like I like playing games. Why not try and make one? Which is I think is probably a similar thing for a lot of people. It's a challenge and it's a way of expressing creativity,
What do you
I
play? What?
suppose.
Sorry, before I forget my question. What instrument do you play?
I play guitar and bass. Yeah,
Acoustic guitar, um, anything?
both. Yeah,
Both.
yeah, any yeah.
Cool.
Mostly acoustic these days, but yeah, also play electric
Yeah.
and bass as well.
Um, Judging by the beard, a bit of a rocker.
Yeah, I like I would say a broad range for me, or maybe it's not broad, but anything from like softer kind of indie music to, screaming death metal. So yeah.
Um, so you thought, okay, I will try to do a board game. Um, how hard was it to come to come to have an idea and to make a game which worked?
Not too hard at that point because I didn't know much of what games could be. So my kind of idea of game was like, well, you roll the dice on your turn. That's the main thing you do. So that's kind of where I was at as a designer. I didn't know all these ways you could do certain things, all these tools you could use to design. So I guess I was just in this fun space of like, well, this works, this works. Um, and yeah, and to be fair, the game wasn't amazing. So there wasn't like tons of development and tons of like changing and tweaking that we do now. Um, so just to make that first game wasn't too much work. I think it was just pure enjoyment because I wanted to do it and it was fun to do it. Whereas now, like I still enjoy making these bigger Euro games, but they are still also a lot of work. A few months of just like lots and lots of playing and testing. So, yeah,
How so your first game was not published. Your first published game.
I
Uh,
did. I can't remember how many games I did. It was about 6 to 8 small games, but I did actually self-publish them. But you can't find them anywhere now. They were more like fancy prototypes,
you
to be fair.
you found them and you burned them.
Yeah, yeah. I've still got a copy of each of them. But yeah.
You published them. You self-published in New Zealand,
Yeah.
practically. Your first published design is, let's say, well known to a lot of people. Is shipwrights. Shipwrecks.
Shipwrights is the first game that sort of got international, excuse me, international kind of notice, I guess. It was the first game on Kickstarter. It's really is the one that kind of started us as a more of a, I guess, a global brand, you could say, as opposed to some small hobby brand in New Zealand. Yeah.
Um, so how many games did you self-publish, and how many games were shelved before you got to a game which got recognition?
Yeah, I think it was about 6 to 8 that I made. They were very small, like small card games, things I could just make with myself, basically, sourcing bits from different places and put them together myself, um, and a couple others. So yeah, probably 8-ish, I think, before I actually put Shipwrights on Kickstarter. Um,
And
and in that whole period, I was really just like figuring out what I liked to design. Yeah, really.
and how many years did it take you to get to that?
6 years.
Six
Yeah.
years until you got to
Yeah.
probably your
So I was
first.
making like maybe one game a year, really, just for fun. Yeah.
And then you got the shipwrights. Is that right? Shipwrights, yeah,
Yep.
of the
North Sea.
North Sea.
Yep.
It's not the North Sea trilogy. And why why did you choose to go on Kickstarter?
I think I tried using a New Zealand-based site for a previous game um, because Kickstarter wasn't available in New Zealand at that point. And then later that year, I think it came out saying we'll now open up to New Zealand creatives to use Kickstarter. So I was obviously aware of crowdfunding as a thing. I think I had backed a couple of Kickstarters from maybe it was even from bands like bands I'd listened to rather than games. So I
Yeah.
knew about Kickstarter. Hadn't used it too much, but I knew of the potential of like putting board games on there and stuff. It just wasn't a thing I could do for quite a while. Um, and my motivation was really like, well, I might just do one more game. I've been doing this hobby for 6 years. It's not making me any money. I'm probably losing money more than anything. But it's been a lot of fun. But maybe I should just sort of wrap up, do one last game. I'd had Shipwrights kind of as an idea on my shelf for about 2 years. And I knew that it needed lots of artwork. It needed more components, so probably a bigger box than I'm usually doing. So I knew it was a big project and I couldn't really make it myself how I'd usually make games. So I knew I had to go to China or somewhere to manufacture. It's going to be a lot more work. So that's kind of why I went to Kickstarter. I was like, well, I'll try and do one last game. If people really want this game, then we'll make it happen. So I put it up for like basically no money. I think I lost probably like 10 grand or something on that first campaign. But it was just like I just wanted to make the game. I wasn't trying to make money out of it. And so I sold it for as cheap as possible, or cheaper probably. Yeah, and I wasn't thinking about doing this trilogy or anything. It was just let's do this one game. Yeah.
Did you so did, in the meantime you are still working as a engineer or something, a computer engineer, right?
At that point, I was working in a printing factory. I was a factory manager doing digital printing onto t-shirts. So I did it for 6 years while so this kind of started up. Yeah.
And on I think on shipwrights it was not the Miko who did the artwork. No, it was
No, he did. He did.
he
That was
did.
his first game.
It was for,
Yeah.
how did you get in contact with him?
So I was on deviantart.com and I think I was just searching like Viking character, just trying to see what people were making out there in the art world. And I found sort of like four or five that I really liked. And when I got in touch with Micho, I think he replied back to me on Facebook. Um, I just said like, look, I want to make this game about Vikings. I really like this character you drew. Um, would you want to do some? And he just, I think within about 3 or 4 hours, he emailed back three concept characters, which were like amazing. I think it was the blacksmith, the assassin, and like the who was it? The barbarian or something. These three first characters he did like, in a few hours. I was just blown away, and I was like, "Well, do you want to make this game?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, sure, why not?" So that was kind of how it started. Pretty simple. He hadn't done board games before, but he's like very prolific, in his other like he teaches art, he does comic book art, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, he's a big name in Macedonia.
um, yeah, and in a way he, he but yeah. Now, so this in a way shipwrights got you your starting
Yeah,
capital, let's call it like this, image capital more than anything. It
yeah,
made you an image in the board gaming company, but the yeah, board gaming world. But the game that put you on the map was Raiders of the North Sea.
yeah, for sure.
Um, my question now is tied to another part of this industry, which is publishing. Why did you or did you think I want to go to a bigger company? Maybe a bigger company would help me, but or I want to go straight self-publishing and I want to grow my company at the same time?
I was very keen to self-publish. I think early on when I was first doing like a few hobby kind of games, my own hobby, um, I think I liked the idea of pitching to someone else. Um, but then as I got more into it, more into development and learning more about how to make a good game a great game, I guess I discovered I quite liked publishing. I liked like the art directing, the product design, every aspect of making the game. So by the point that I'd done shipwrights and then thinking about raiders, I was already very much like I want to do this myself. It wasn't really a question at that point.
So you put on two hats, the designer hats
Yeah, yeah.
and
At least two. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, wait, wait for it, and the publisher hat,
yeah.
so which are so different in so many ways. But how was it to put on the developer hat, which is sometimes it's good to be your own developer, but sometimes you might get in your own way. How do you manage to put on those two hats?
Yeah, I mean, design and development kind of blur together quite a bit. I think with me being the publisher, and as soon as I start working, or anyone like Sam McDonald or someone else starts pitching a small kind of concept for a board game, I'm already thinking about the box cover and the layout and how it's going to look on the table. So I guess I have that in mind the whole process. So the development side of things is more about like getting the concept to become what you hope it will be at the end. And for the way that we do things at Garful, development really is just playing the game over and over and over and over and making the smallest of tweaks every time, which I love because you get to play games. But also it's like analyzing and changing and tweaking, um, which yeah, it can be a problem if the designer can't see the issues, I suppose. If they're not play testing with a lot of different people, then there might be this massive flaw in the game that they're just not seeing. So that's where I guess a developer can be nice to have a separate person. But for us, we kind of know what we want our games to be, and we know how to let them kind of grow into what they need to be, because we've been making these games for a long time now. So I hope we've we've learned some things. Um, I guess we've learned to trust our gut a bit, and especially with the medieval stuff now that Sam and I are co-designing, we really challenge each other a lot. So we bounce back a lot, we push back a lot, and try and make the game as amazing as it can be. Rather than just if you're by yourself, it's quite easy just to sort of settle and go, yeah, that's good enough, that'll do, you know. Whereas Sam and I will agonize, especially Sam, will agonize over every little detail a lot more to make sure it's absolutely perfect, which it never will be, but we try. Yeah.
So in the company, you're not alone in the company. You
No,
probably
yeah,
it grew slowly. You were
it has.
one at the beginning and got bigger and bigger. Um, how we going back to the? I want to ask you, uh, how is it to work with a with an artist? Do you close with an artist, or do you let him do his job and then then see how you go from there? You give him specific things, specific lists of things you want to be drawn. Are you how involved you are in the whole process?
Depends on the artist and it depends on your relationship with them, I guess. If you're working with someone you didn't work with before, you should be very specific and hold their hand a little bit, I think. But also, you need to know what their style is and kind of know that's what you want. There's no point going to one person expecting different style. So when I first sent stuff to Micho, it was like, I want a male barbarian. I'd like to have a female trader, and she should be holding a basket. Maybe some fish are in that basket. I'd be quite descriptive about stuff. Now I just like very basic, like, oh, just give me a female priest, whatever, female this, male that. And I might be a bit more specific about adding more diversity with like skin colors and stuff within our games now, which I wasn't previously. But generally, it's just very basic, like because I trust his ability to make fun, interesting characters. I'm not going to try and give them little every detail. Oh, this person should have black hair and this person should have, this kind of stuff. Unless it's important for gameplay. So, for example, for architects, and when we're making those player boards, I'll say, oh, I want a male and a female. Can they both be wearing blue clothes because they're the blue player color? Stuff like that. Where, Whereas, like with say the Paladins player board, I'll give him the graphic overlay of that, and I'll put little notes say maybe here can be this, maybe this can be here, and I'll often even like sketch out my own really disgustingly gorgeous picture with my limited skills of like kind of where I think should things should be. Um, yeah, so I'll often do some like real basic line work to kind of show maybe like the line of a shore that I'm expecting to see on this board or something, or where a house could be. Um, yeah, that's more when it's about the gameplay, where things have to be in a certain place. But for character art, it's or box art even, I don't do too much direction for those. Um, Whereas if I'm working with my brother, Shem Phillips, who does all of our ancient anthology stuff and our sci-fi circadian stuff, because we're both local and we're brothers, we understand each other a lot. I can be very specific and we can bounce back quite fast. So he can just say, "Oh, how about this in an image?" And I'll say, "Oh, I'll change this," and he'll change it. Whereas I don't want to waste Micho's time and that kind of stuff with little details and change this, change that. I just trust him to like make what we kind of expect. So that's a long, drawn out answer, but it's kind of how it needs to be. It's a relationship
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
thing with an artist. Yeah, yeah.
That
Need to respect them as an artist, but also you want to make sure your product is what it is, what you want it to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
How did it? I forgot to ask you one question, and I realize now. How did it feel, and how does it feel now to have the how did it feel then to have your first game published? What was the feeling, and how is it now to see a game which you work on 1 year maybe finally in your hands?
It doesn't get old, like the feeling of seeing the first copy. I just got the first pre-production copy of Scholars of the South Tigris, so like just getting that box and opening up is always exciting. Um, I think when I got my first game made that way, which would have been shipwrights, I guess, from China, that was a huge feeling like, whoa, this is all finished, it's wrapped and everything, like pretty fancy. Whereas like the way I've been doing it earlier in the years before that, I guess it wasn't as much of a buzz because I was sort of hand cutting the cards and putting the rule books in myself, so I wasn't really getting this finished product. Um, but yeah, it's so cool to see a finished thing done that you spend, like you said, like a year or so making all that time and effort put into it to see the final version. Still pretty cool.
Um, yeah. So we've talked a bit. You are the let's finish what we talked a bit about later earlier with the artwork. The graphic design, is it that it starts with you, the designer, or do you let it on the shoulders of the of the artist?
So for all of our games, I do the first initial graphic design. So often we'll have just a almost black and white kind of prototype. Obviously there'll be colors for the icons and stuff, but just a whiteboard, maybe some lines if they're needed for to give the feeling of like, hey, here's a river, but nothing too major. Um, for the medieval stuff that we do, the trilogies, I do all the graphic design for the final product. So our early prototypes look quite similar graphically, because I'm kind of designing them way back there, knowing they're going to have Metro's art under them. So that's easy to do. For our other games where my brother does the graphic design and the artwork, I will basically give him my version. Like, here's my ugly version of the game that you're going to make look beautiful. And he'll do his own icons based off the ones I've done, which often will just be like borrowed from other games of ours. Like, oh, here's gain a card, here's like pay a coin, and he'll make his own coin and everything else and do that stuff. So that's fun for me because like while I do our graphic design for a lot of games, my skills are very limited and I kind of stay within what I know I can do. So it's fun seeing someone else with more artistic skill like create the icons and things. So, yeah, it's much like design develop. There's pros and cons to having someone do both graphic design and artwork, but it's just knowing how it merges. So I have seen like some games of with Mitro's artwork where I don't feel that the graphic design really does his artwork justice. So, which is sad. So for our games, it's more about making sure our icons and our all our graphic overlays don't take away from his artwork, but they kind of just support it. Which is a challenge for graphic design, but yeah,
I see.
good fun. I quite enjoy graphic design as a way of game design because often while you're like making up your prototype, you're thinking about icons and thinking about layouts, and they can sometimes inspire design decisions in the game. So it's kind of part of my design process is making those prototypes. Yeah.
What is your design philosophy, if you have
Um,
any?
we, yeah, we do. We kind of landed on the ABCs. So the A is for agency. So games need to have interesting decisions. That's kind of what we're about with our games. If I'm not making good decisions, not able to make good decisions, if I feel like the game is playing me or just too much luck, it's not fun. So we want to have games that have good agency. Um, the B and the C, it's a bit crude, but it stands for butt clenching. Those moments when you're on the edge of your seat and you're tense and you're scared about what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, butt clenching. So adding tension into games. Like if you're playing Architects, when there's one spot left in the guild hall and you know that someone's going to take it, or the tax stand, someone's going to steal the tax. That kind of moment of like you're hoping no one takes what you want, or the game might finish too early before you're ready to finish the game. So we want all our games to have good decisions and then those kind of moments of the tense kind of a little bit of worry, the butt clenching. And also just the other thing we try to add is just a simple story. Doesn't need to be a narrative driven game, but kind of a simple like who are you, what are you doing in the game? We don't always hit this too strongly, but we try to. Like, for example, Raiders of the North Sea pretty much spells out what you're doing in the game. You're a Viking and you're raiding. So we try and make sure our games have sort of a simple story to tell, if we can. Yeah.
I see. Um, and how do you work? Do you start from theme and go to mechanisms, or you go the other way around?
Um, we're usually more mechanism based to start with. Um, it depends on what we're working on. So we kind of have our worlds that we build in now. We've got the sci-fi, the ancient, and the medieval. So I call that more of like the setting rather than the theme. So we kind of know the setting. Um, we'll try and find the story that we're going to tell within that setting. So for example, with the West, um, which was actually more mechanical when it came to us, because Sam had the first early concept for that, which was about building buildings in some kind of medieval fantasy world. So that was kind of already there. Um, for the second game, Paladins, I really like that word Paladin. It's only really used mostly in like fantasy worlds, RPGs and stuff. Um, so I like the way of using it as a title. So we had the title for that game first, and I knew that I wanted players to like use um, these Paladin characters of lore. Maybe you've got a deck of Paladin cards or something like that. So we had this kind of the story, the setting a little bit, and then we're trying to make the mechanisms that suit that story. That's usually how we design now. We'll kind of know what we want to do as far as setting the story and then figure it out. Um, but I think my more natural way is to go straight into mechanisms. Like, what's a cool, fun, action-taking mechanism we can play around with? And then once you've got that mechanism, you're like, all right, what is the story? That's usually the way it goes. But I think a bit of both is good. And once we have the setting and the story, once we have some mechanisms that we like and that are working, it's almost straight away you get more into theme. And by theme I mean more like specific immersive touchstones of the story. Um, so for example, when I redid Rays of Scythia, um, I had that setting. I was like, all right, it can be the Scythians, not the Vikings. Um, and then when I did some more research, I discovered, well, the Scythians didn't actually want to die in battle like the Vikings did. So that makes no sense to have a Valkyrie track in the Scythian version of the game. So those sort of things are what the theme should be inspiring more. So the theme can often inspire mechanisms and they can bounce back off each other, which is how I like design. have that core, that foundation of like what is the simple story, and then use mechanisms and theme to kind of tell the story. Yes. Yeah.
I see. Um, so do you enjoy doing all of the work, also the publishing, also the designing, also developing? Do you enjoy doing everything? I don't know. Do you do also the Kickstarter, everything that you need to do to do a Kickstarter page and to do a Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah, so I do all of the publishing basically for our company. I do half, maybe less than half the design work because I'm often leaning off Sam McDonald or other designers, such as like Hadrian's Wall was fully designed by Bobby Hill. I just jumped on for the sort of the last bit of the development and then the art direction and stuff. Um, so most of my time is publishing, which involves all the fun jobs of like dealing with replacement parts and like talking to other publishers and all that fun stuff. Which yeah, I don't enjoy that, but I don't spend tons of time doing it, so I don't I'm not agonizing over every email I send. So I think the parts that maybe I don't enjoy as much are like writing rule books, but I'll do it. I sometimes put it off a bit if I can, just because it's a big job, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
yeah, I think someone asked me this, and I think it popped up the other week about like what do I not enjoy in what I do, which is very small. Um, I think it's when you finally get that game released, and then within like a week of it being out, someone has a complaint about something they wish that we had done differently. So like, I wish they'd written the rulebook this way. I wish they'd done this on the icon. I wish they'd done this. That's probably the worst part of the job. So you go, cool, thank you. That's very constructive. You just like finished making this game for a year, it's finally out, and then someone wants to give you their 2 cents straight away. So, but that's you gotta let it just brush off. But that's the only kind of stuff really. Otherwise, the actual work itself of making the game, I really enjoy. Yeah.
Uh, do you also, you touched a bit on this, but I'd like you to talk more a bit about it. Um, do you enjoy more designing alone or designing with a partner?
It's definitely easier designing with someone else. That's for sure, because you can bounce back ideas. You're kind of motivating each other to keep working on it. You've got a play tester right there ready to go, so that helps. So you can do two-player play tests very easily because you both want to make the game. Um, of course, that depends on, I guess, the relationship. I guess in some situations, if one person's not doing their share of the load, it'll feel bad. But co-design with Sam McDonald is like a breeze. We really enjoy it. But I still like to design by myself now and then, more as a challenge to myself to keep being a designer, and not just kind of lean on someone else. So um, I did Legacy of You, which is coming out next year. It's a solo only game, which is obviously was easy to test by myself. Um, but that was a nice challenge, like to keep making sure I'm still designing, refining my skill on my own, not just co-designing. Yeah, I enjoy both, but I think co-designing is in a way easier, because you got someone else helping you out. Um, yeah, and it's those bigger Euro games especially, a lot of work goes into them. Whereas a lighter, like I've done a few abstract games like Noctiluca and Shelfie Stacker over the last few years. They're all like solo designs, and they're a lot easier because they're smaller games, less components, less kind of strategies and things to think about. So I quite enjoy those because you can kind of bang them out in a few months and then be done with them. So they're kind of nice. So like that's done. Tick the box. Whereas a big Euro game's like a 9 months to a year commitment to design. So yeah.
Design and playtest everything. Um,
Oh yeah.
how much did you play? Do you play tests? How many playtests you have for a game usually?
We don't record them all.
Of
That
course.
it'd be in the hundreds for sure. Um, so I know we're working on Inventors of the South Tigris currently. Um, that game, so it's the third game in the
This,
South trilogy.
yeah.
Um, we've had a good working prototype for about 2 months now, I think, and we've played it probably about 5 times a week, if not more, since then. So if you're good at maths, That's 9 weeks. That's like we've probably
40.
played it
Okay.
40 to 50 times.
40.
Yeah, probably about 40 times I think so far, and we're only just starting the development process now, really. So there's probably a good like 6 months left of playtesting. So we played a lot, and then once you get into solo testing, there's even more testing that happens. Um, but yeah, but I mean the thing is that with each test, little things change, so those other tests almost become irrelevant because they're not the game that you're working on. So yeah, I would estimate maybe 200 to 300 tests for one of our kind of games,
Yeah.
which is crazy when you think that like in the month that it comes out, there might be 1,000 people playing it.
Playing it.
So
Yeah.
they've played it more than we have. Yeah.
Not combined. They've played it more than
Yeah, 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 yeah.
combined. Um, do uh, so. You find it easy to for somebody to take up your load. Is it you have the same fulfillment working with somebody else on or the same fulfillment that you get that you work alone and get the game at some point?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's like either you're proud of this thing you've done by yourself, or you could be like proud with your friend that you've done it with them. So yeah, this is good.
Um, okay. So now I do have a question for or advice which you I think you could give to people who start wants to start designing. What is your uh, most precious rule in designing games?
I think the most important thing is make a game that you want to play. Um, because it can be, you can try and challenge yourself to make a game that you don't want to play, I guess. Or you might just think this is the game it needs to be. But if you're not enjoying making that game, then you're not going to make the best game possible because you don't want to play test it. It might sound weird because obviously you try and make a game you like, but that's kind of a bit of our philosophy as we're developing though. So um, often there'll be moments while you're designing or developing where you'll need to make a decision about a certain part of the game. It could be a component, or it could be um, scoring potential for a certain path, or whatever it might be. And we still always come back to the idea of like what would we want it to be if we were the player, because we make games that we want to play. Um, so while there might be things in a game, for example, say Raiders of the North Sea as an example, there's not equal turns in that game, because as soon as someone triggers the end, there's one more round
Yeah.
done. So you don't finish around and do one final round, and like tried and true Euro players who are like, this is not fair, this is unfair. Why is there unfairness in the game? And for me as a player, I want that excitement of like the game could end at any moment. That's more important than this kind of strange rule about fairness that gets thrown in games. So as a designer, make games that you want to play. If that kind of thing really annoys you in games, then don't put that in your game. Um, so yeah, it's a long way of saying it, but yeah.
And do you recommend going into um, publishing and developing your own game?
I think you have to find out if you like publishing first. I definitely wouldn't tell someone not to do it if they want to try and make their own game. But I think it's smart to try other avenues first. So design your game, show your friends, show people that aren't your friends, and just get feedback. If you still think you've got a decent game, see if a publisher will look at it. Um, and don't just look for the yes or no, look for their feedback. I'll often get people trying to pitch games to me, and I'll just say to them straight away, I'll say, look, I don't see us publishing this game, but I'm happy to give feedback. Um, because if publishers keep saying no, maybe the game's not good, but maybe it's just not for them. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've had games rejected. So um, yeah, and maybe at that point, that's when you start going, maybe I should make it myself. But I think the pitfall of that is that maybe the game's not very good, and it needs more work, or it's just never going to get to that stage. So self-publishing will often lead to like games being published that probably needed more work, or maybe didn't shouldn't be published. I don't know if it's fair, but it depends on experience and maturity as well, I think, of the person doing it. So Yeah, it's if you can get advice and get someone else to pick up the load for you, I think that's the better path. But if you're actually interested in business and all the admin side of things, and you actually want to be a publisher, then go for it. But it's a big commitment, a lot of time.
It is, isn't it? Now we go back to my set, which is one more question is what is fun to you?
What is fun? Burning my brain, I think, is the fun part.
That
Yeah,
is fun for you. Yep.
yeah.
Fun is different for different people.
I mean, I enjoy the shared experience of playing a game. Um, with playing, sit down with friends, enjoying the experience, playing the game. But not all games need to tick that box for me, I guess. Like I would love to sit down and play like a 5 player game of Nemesis and enjoy the moment and the experience and like remember that story as a group. That's so much fun. But also sitting down and playing Tale by myself solo is also very fun for me. So there's different ways of having fun, I guess, which, obviously there is.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And like I said, different things for different people.
yeah.
Um, what is your most played game?
Most played game. Wow. I don't track my plays like a lot of people do.
No, I don't either,
Um,
but
yeah,
somehow I know
yeah.
which is.
I mean, early on, it would have been like Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne, thrashing that so much, but I haven't touched them in years now. Um, but now, what am I playing a lot? Other than we do a lot of play testing, obviously, so that's a big part of it for me. But for my solo stuff, because a lot of my in-person gaming will be played on the table behind me
Yeah.
solo. So I've went through the solo campaign of It's a Wonderful World and then played It's a Wonderful Kingdom. So played that game probably like 30 or so times in space of a few weeks. Um, yeah, it's hard to say really. I mean, maybe Journeys in Middle Earth might be my most played game because I've played like 5 campaigns the whole way through,
Uh-huh. I see.
which is about
It's
70 or 80 camp levels. Yeah. So
the descent reskin, no? Journeys to the Middle Earth.
yeah, it's quite different from Descent.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's similar kind of vibe.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't played it. I have not played that game.
Oh, it's really good. Really good.
Um. So and do you have a favorite game? What is your favorite game?
So I'm just working on my top 50 for the year. My top game for the last like probably a long, long time has been Pandemic. I don't say like Pandemic Legacy or whatever, but basically Pandemic the system. I've played all the legacies. I played season one twice. I've played all of the spin-off games of it, and I would still happily pick up the game and play it right now. So for that reason, it's my number one because I could keep going back to it, and just because the whole infection system, how you flip cards over, is just so genius. So, and then below that, you've got like games like Lost Ruins of Arnak, um, Great Western Trail, and Underwater Cities. Those kind of games are my favorites. But yeah, Pandemic takes the top still.
And which is your favorite out of the whole system? Do you have a favorite or
Um, Base games would probably be Iberia,
Iberia?
but
Yeah,
I,
a
I
lot of
prefer
people
just
like that.
playing the base game with On the Brink on the hardest difficulty with all the modules thrown in is my favorite. Yeah, but I've
Yeah,
been playing the new Star Wars one a bit. That's quite cool,
I
but
haven't.
different.
I have no idea
Yeah,
how it plays. And yet, you have not designed a co-op.
I have
You
designed a co-op.
you have
Yeah,
which one?
there were a few years ago called Bethel Woods. I think it came out similar time to Raiders or Explorers.
I
It's a Mancala kind of system, which actually
yeah, that was
I played the loop.
I
I played the loop recently, which has some similarities.
yeah. Well, that one was. I think it went under a lot of people's
Yeah,
radars.
it would have for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and uh, which is your favorite designer? Or
Sam McDonald.
sorry, who is your Sam McDonald?
It's always my answer. Yeah.
And at the end of this part of the interview, I want to ask you if you want to say something, if there is something I haven't asked you and you would want to talk about.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I could just say what we've got coming out if you want. We will have a Kickstarter in January for some expansions for our Circadian stuff. We'll have Scholars of the South Tigris coming to Kickstarter in about March, April. We have a fourth ancient anthology game coming, which is going to be set in ancient Jerusalem, which will be pretty cool. And then releasing next year, we'll have Legacy of You around about May.
A lot of stuff
And
coming.
we do a lot of stuff.
You
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you keep yourselves busy.
Yeah, we're trying to limit it to three Kickstarters at most, but it often ends up being four for some reason. But yeah, it's just when expansions start coming out, it kind of gets thrown into the mix. But I ideally want to do just like maybe three base games a year.
Do
But yeah.
do you like doing expansions for games? Do you design expansions when you design the game or afterwards?
Afterwards, yeah. Usually it would be after a game's been released because we want to hear feedback about things,
Uh-huh.
because you can address some of that feedback with the expansions. But now we're kind of getting quite far ahead of our schedule now. I mean, like Wayfarers just came out and we're working on the third game already. So and Scholars has been finished for quite a while. Um, so knowing that those games are done, we're kind of going back to them now, even though they haven't been released, and working on expansion ideas, not to finalize them, but just to have concepts in mind.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, we usually it's like we finish the game, make it what we want to make it, rather than pull things out and save them for expansions. We try and make the game as the best we can, and then like for example, Paladins, when that one was done, Sam and I both sort of said to ourselves, like, how would we ever expand this game? Like, it's such a big game already. But sure enough, like, you give it a year or two and you start thinking about ways you could expand it. So, yeah, that's kind of how we do it usually. With the two expansion for Raiders, that was based off feedback. So one piece of feedback was players saying it was hard to get iron in the game because they were putting it all into their armor track, and then they'd had none for the offerings. So Holy Heroes gives you new ways to get more resources. So that was one way that kind of addressed that. And then the other kind of side of the field was saying that the rating didn't feel like thematic and fun and like crazy enough. So that's where Fields of Fame brought in like the Jarls that you can challenge, and the blood tokens that go on your crew and stuff. So it brings a bit more risk and fun to those and moments to those raids.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very much waiting for feedback. Whereas now we're getting far ahead of that stuff now. So expansions are probably made before people even play the base games now. Yeah.
I see. Uh, and now we go to the fun part, the second part of the, which is a questionnaire, which is a
Cool.
questionnaire that derives from the two big questionnaires of Marcel Proust. And the first one you do it at a certain age, the second one you do it at another age, a later age. Uh, so, um, and the first question is, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word. Um, I don't know if I have a favorite word. Um, that's a tricky question. I do like words a lot. I like writing and stuff. So um, I guess to stay on point, stay on topic, we'll just say paladin.
Paladin.
It's a strong word, which I like about it. It feels balanced. Yeah.
What's your least favorite word?
Least favorite word. Um, we'll just say probably. Probably. Yeah. I don't like words that I struggle to say. Actually, properly.
What turns you on creatively, emotionally, spiritually?
Uh, hmm. I think seeing potential is probably what it is. Um, so when you have an idea and then it starts to work and you see it has potential, that's what gets me excited. You know. I guess that could be for any area of life, really. As soon as you see something kind of like could have value, I find that exciting. Yeah.
What turns you off?
Hmm. Negativity, I think. Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
I don't curse.
You don't curse? Well, it's something you must at some point um, when you're mad or unhappy. You don't need to say a curse word, but how, you might have a word which releases your tension.
I don't know. I try not to, so uh I don't know if I get what would I say. I don't know. Uh you could say I don't know.
You've never cursed?
I probably have, but I try not to. Yeah.
so what,
Try and be positive. Try and be positive and not,
so
yeah.
when you did,
Well,
what word did you use?
probably the worst of words, yeah. Um,
Is it
I think bunghole is a pretty good word. Bunghole. Yeah. Yeah, bunghole. I don't know. I don't guess.
what sound or noise do you love?
Um, hmm. Sound or noise do I love? Uh, hmm. I'd say just music probably, but it can be so broad. So probably just like a good rhythm in music. Yeah.
Uh,
A groove.
what sound or noise do you hate?
Um, hmm. Children fighting.
I can feel some trauma there.
Yeah. I have three kids, so you hear them bickering. Yeah.
Which profession outside the one you already do would you like to attempt?
Uh, I don't know. I probably have attempted if I wanted to try it. I always did think though, I didn't study accounting or economics while I was at school. But after I finished school, I realized I probably would have been a good accountant. So just put accountant. I wouldn't do it now, but yeah, that's the way my brain's wired. So
What profession would you not like to attempt?
um, so many. Uh, I don't know what should be the worst though. Prime Minister. There you go. Do that one.
Prime Minister. Now that's a big one.
Yeah, I would not want to do that.
Not too shabby. If this is a big question, if heaven exists, what would you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, I'm a man of faith, so hopefully he would say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
I see. So these were my questions for you this evening, this morning, this evening here, this morning there. Um, Shem, thank you a lot for accepting my invitation. It was a lot of fun talking to you, and
Yeah, it's fun.
and I hope you had a good time. I hope you felt good. I hope you felt comfortable here
Yeah,
in my virtual gaming room on my virtual chairs. Um, I hope you. Uh, I am curious to see what you come up with. What you come up next. I haven't played the South Tigris, your first game. I have
yep,
played the other trilogy, um, and yeah, like I said, it was a lot of fun having you here. Um, we will be hopefully we'll see each other Essen maybe or somewhere if you
yeah,
come at some point. Thank you a lot for coming on. I would kindly ask you not to. I will do the outro and then we will talk a bit more
yeah. Cool.
afterwards.
Thanks for having me.
Um, I will remain I want to thank everybody who came and watched live. I will want to thank everybody who who come and watches after the fact. Hello, Marianne. Welcome. It was a a very pleasurable discussion and insightful. I hope for every for one someone who wants to maybe start publishing, designing games. I think there are some good thoughts there which will make make you think. And as always, if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, because yeah, it keeps the internet alive and helps us going, helps us grow. If you have thoughts, ideas, please write them. Write them. I will respond to them. And until next time, I will thank Shem again, and I will say to you, as it says here in my here, it says play a lot, play loads, have fun, and bye bye, fine folks, wherever in the world you are.